Hi, welcome back to my channel. Now, as you know, I do two different types of videos. I do book videos and I do art-based videos as I dabble in both worlds. Now, I'm contemplating on doing another thing, but we'll get into that later. So this video, as I mentioned before, that I might do a video showing the different tools and things that I use. So I figured this would be a good time to do that because my kids are napping and I can kind of fit this in. So I do, I guess, my own interpretation of dot mandala, and I also have just started getting into paint pours. So sometimes I mix the two, sometimes I leave them individual. But lately I've been really into mixing the two and trying to find a really good mixture that works for me and I really like. And it seems to be paying off because I'm getting a lot of positive feedback from my Instagram family who seems to enjoy what I do as well. So in the dot mandalas that I do, everything is freehand. That being said, it's not computer generated, so I don't use any pre-done dot mandala stencils or anything else. The only stencils that I use every once in a while is I might use, a circle stencil or that kind of thing. But generally, this is all that I use. I use a ruler, a pencil, and a compass. Before I had this, literally, I used a piece of string and a tack. So, I measure what I want, draw a circle, it stays. That's pretty much what we do. Sorry, everything else is freehand or winging it. Sometimes I will doodle ahead of time to get an idea. Sometimes I'll draw it and then I'll paint it in. But for the most part, everything is kind of as I go. So that's what I use for, the basics. When I start a piece, I usually draw out what I want. Sometimes I've got a pretty good idea, sometimes I don't, but generally I like to think I do. So, I'll take a compass and I'll take my canvas. Sometimes it's a canvas, sometimes it's a piece of wood. Sometimes I will draw on rock, sometimes a piece of slate. At least that's what I've been doing so far. So regardless of what I'm doing, 9 times out of 10, I prefer a black background to a white background. Although I can be flexible, it really depends on my mood and what color scheme I'm going for and how much I want them to stand out. And whether or not that color shows up on black. Not all colors do. So I'll paint my surface black and I will proceed. I'll use, like I said, the compass and a ruler. And depending as to what my surface is, will determine what I draw with. So very rarely do I use a standard pencil unless the surface I'm drawing on won't take anything else. And what I mean by that is this one, for example. Okay, when I did the background on it, there's a lot of metallic paint on this. So when I drew the background on it, nothing else wanted to show up. So I could draw till I was blue in the face trying to get my grid lines in, but it wouldn't show. So I had to resort to using pencil. So whereas most of the time I don't have that problem. It really just depends. I find that if I'm drawing on a metallic based background, I will have an issue. Generally, my favorite, a pencil to use to draw as a watercolor pencil. You can get them in your local dollar store. You can get them at Walmart as well. You can basically anything I use, you can either find in a dollar store, Walmart, Amazon, or Michael's. Just because that's what I have around me. So I don't typically go to specialty stores unless I have to. If I'm after something incredibly specific, then I will. Otherwise, for the most part, Amazon carries almost everything I need. So, but I find that generally I will use a watercolor pencil, and what I like about these is I find that, I'll draw out what I want to draw, and it's almost like using chalk without a ton of smudge left over. I generally use a Q-tip. I'll wet the Q-tip once everything is done, and I will erase all my lines. And it comes off really easy. You don't have to scrub it. There's not a ton of leftover residue, which, I'll be honest, when I first started, I was using a charcoal pencil. And while I love using this, I found that when I use it on a straight black background, trying to erase it afterward was a bit of a nightmare. It left white smudges everywhere, and I usually ended up either repainting that spot or finding some way to either incorporate it or something. Like it was a nightmare for me. So the only time I use a charcoal pencil now, and retracting a little bit what I said, only pencil will work. Actually, this will work sometimes on a metallic background as well. And I find that on top of a paint pour, because there's layers and layers of paint on tops of canvas, this doesn't work too bad either. I'll find I'll use this a little bit faster than I'll use this, because this wipes off nicer off paint when it's layered like that. I don't know if it's the WD-40 that I add or whatever it is, but something about it makes this a little bit easier. So it really just depends on, what you're working on. If you're not sure, pick a corner of your canvas that you haven't done anything with yet and try it. Do a couple of scribbles, use a white, you can use paper towel. I find it shreds too much, so I generally use a Q-tip, and it's finer and it soaks up water better. So take your Q-tip, dab it in water, a little bit of corner, or wipe off a corner and see if it works off or wipes off fairly clean. If it doesn't, experiment. That's the nice thing about being an artist, is you can take the time to experiment and see what works for you. So that's what I generally use for that. I will sometimes use a standard pencil, but again, it really just depends on what I have and what I'm working with. So not usually though. Okay, so once I get to that point, if I'm doing just a straight dot mandala, now my dot tools have changed a lot since I first started. When I first started, I used anything I had in the house because it was just complete improvisation. So for those who are just starting, you can literally use anything that has a round flat bottom or top. So the base of a tack, the bottom of a dowel, you can use the base of a marker. Honestly, you could take the bottom of a pencil and super glue a dime to it or a penny to it, or different size coins. You get a range of circles that way, and use those as dabbing tools or dotting tools. There is a wide range of things you can use, everything from the tip of a needle to sky's really the limit. So now what I prefer to use, although I will use wooden dowels if I'm after a specific size and I have it and I don't have it anywhere else. But generally what I use now, these are called, it's a hole punch transfer set, and I found these on Amazon. Mine was a set of 28 and it comes in a wide range. Now before I use these, I also used to use wood drill bits. And I would use the bottom flat bits for that. You can get them really cheap at a hardware store. You could even potentially find them at Christmas time when they're giving all those cheap stocking stuff or options for dad away kind of thing. You'll usually find little drill bits in there. And you'll want the long ones or the wooden ones. But they usually come in different sizes, and the bottom works actually fairly well. So I will use those, but generally my go-to now are these, as they come in a lot of different sizes. And they're a little bit more durable. I will also use, my favorite thing to use are nail styling tools or nail art tools. I will be perfectly honest, just about anything you can use on your nails are almost perfect for dotting or dot mandalas, whether it's the stickers or the tools or the paints. Even nail polish is really good for that. It just depends on the look you're going for, but these are what I use, and you can get them again on Amazon. Every once in a while you might find them in Walmart, but generally Amazon or any kind of a nail place. So I will use those. Those I use more for if I'm doing what people would call, swipe the dot or walk the dots, where you're getting a variegated size dots, where you're going from big to small. That's generally what I use them for. Dragging the dots is where you make a dot and you swipe it down, or you make a curve or a curlicue. And later I can make a video showing some of those different styles if you'd like to see that more. One of my favorite dotting tools is this, and you can get them in different sizes. They are technically in the clay sculpting section of Michaels if you're looking for them, because I've made that mistake. They have no idea what you're talking about if you ask about a dotting tool. So this is in the clay section. But this is what we call a silicone brush basically, and it's like a harder rubber or silicone for those who know what that is. And I find this is really, really helpful. I don't have to load it nearly as often as a typical nail stylus, and I can just go along, and with how small this is, I can get really small dots when I need to. It's really handy, along with other techniques that you can use it for. Otherwise, I mean, I will use a variety of different style of brushes and things when it's called for it. Lately, with this whole tree creepy look that I've been going with lately, my favorite brushes are these, and this is again out of the nail brush kit that I had. This is technically a brush for your nails, but this is something that I use to make sweepy, willow-like, creepy Halloween style tree branch looking things, and I really enjoy using that brush. So that is what I use a lot. So those are some of the dotting tools and brushes and things that I use. In terms of paints, I've tried a bunch. The three that I typically go for are the DecoArt, and for me in Canada, I have no idea. I know in the US you can get it on their website, but they don't unfortunately ship to Canada unless you go through another supplier. So this one I can actually find in the dollar store. You won't find all of the colors available, but you can find this one in the dollar store. You will find DecoArt in other stores, but it's not this particular one. This is the Crafters acrylic, which you won't find anywhere else unless you find some way to get it through the US. You figure that out, let me know. That being said, Amazon does carry some of them. It ranges. So there's that one. I also use Craftsmart from Michaels. And I'll be honest, I find that I'm not too I find that the hue difference between this and the DecoArt Craft acrylics are actually marginal. So more often than not, although they'll have different names and they have a wider variety of tones and things that you can get, this one's pretty close to that type of product. So if you like that and have a hard time finding it, you'll find this one at Michaels, and although in smaller bottles, it's a lot similar, and it's a paint that I really enjoy using. In fact, I use it 95% of the time now. So between that one and Folk Art, which you can find at Walmart, at least for me you can. So generally, these are the three brands that I go for, and right now I'm a little into these colors, so I just happen to have them on a quick grab. So in terms of paint brands, that's what I use. In terms of clear coats, I'm kind of making a shift lately. I was using a lot of pour mediums where I would varnish the top of it. Right now I'm really into sprays, and I will use the Mod Podge spray. I'm out at the moment, so I can't show you it. I use it a lot. That being said, I discovered this DecoArt spray, and I found it's actually really hard to find in Canada. So I did find it on Walmart on their online site, but in store didn't have it. So it's a little hard to find. So, but I really like it for when I'm painting on a material that isn't canvas. So for my journals, for example, I spray that on my journals now just because it eliminates any possible chance of it being sticky or tacky to the touch, and it won't stick to anything else either, while still protecting your work and still giving a bit of a shine to it, although technically it says matte. But there's a shine to it. Figure that one out. And then for pours, I'll do a paint pour, and as I said in my last art video, I do use, the only additive I use is WD-40. So I will water down my paint to a consistency that would be similar to like running down cake batter, runny, watery cake batter. And then, so it's not quite thick, but not really watered down either. So you want some flow to it. And I find by doing that, you don't even have to add additive to it. You can potentially get some good cells depending on how it's poured and how you do it. I try and use most of my materials that I use, even down to my wooden stir sticks. I try and reuse almost everything I have to keep my costs down as much as possible, because let's face it, most of us artists are poor and we have to keep to a budget. So as mentioned in my last video, as a mom, I had a whole bunch of baby food jars. Tongue twister. So I use a lot of these for mixing and doing my pours. For storing paints, for bigger ones, you will have to go to Michael's or any other store you can find them. But for bigger ones, and actually I take that back, I did find these at the dollar store, but they're a little bit more expensive because you get less for the amount. So, but I store generally WD-40 in this one. So that is what I use as an additive in my paint pours. I'll spray a bunch. I need to actually redo it. You spray a whole bunch into a container, and then I use a eyedropper just to add them into my paint. Now, I don't add it into the paint until the end, just so that it doesn't mix in. If it mixes in too well, then if you're after cells, they don't really populate as well as they could. So I'm finding if you want bigger cells, I add anywhere between 3 and 6 drops depending on how much paint I need or am working with. So I'll drop them in after mixing my paint, and then I'll do a stir. I'll do a couple of stirs if I want bigger cells, or I'll do a few more if I want just a bunch of little ones. So there's that. But for storing paint, I generally use these little containers that I get at the dollar store, so that I waste as little paint as possible. I know a lot of people will use, paint palettes, and honestly, I have them, but I don't use them unless I absolutely have to. Using lids and paint palettes and things like that. If I'm desperate and I'm trying to achieve something, I will use them. But I find I waste a lot of paint by using a palette. So I use the jars. In fact, I'll even use a jar to mix a brand new color just to make sure that I don't waste anything. Even if it's a color that I won't use and I have to remix it, it's always a color, or it'll always be something I can reuse, remix, or do something later with. So I'm all about wasting as less as possible. And then for pours and such, I use just a standard torch, which I got this off Amazon. Works really, really well. It's a butane torch. Refills really nicely. So that about sums it up. And I'm all about using whatever captures my attention at the time to create a piece. So while I use all these tools and I use a lot of paint and things like that, as I've showed you, I'm not opposed to using other items too. This one, for example, these are wooden cutouts. These are paper cutouts. Everything's been fused together. These are those half rocks that people like to use in vases or different displays and things. Those are creating a bit of a 3D effect, and I've literally glued them to the canvas. I will use resin, which is what's on top of them, to secure. I've been getting into resin lately, so I've been doing a lot of resin projects. For those who have been into my art boxes, they've seen that I'm making keychains and magnets and things, and those are mostly done out of resin. But I also use stickers. Anything that's shiny, anything that's 3D-ish. That one doesn't have any, but this one does. This one has stickers on it. I don't know how well you can see that, but if I bring this up a little bit closer, you can see technically those are stickers. Those are those 3D gem stickers, and I will add anything from that to glitter glue to achieve whatever effect that I'm after. This one, for example, it's hard to see with the glare, but if I bring this up close, all this glitter bit, that's all glitter glue. So, and then I seal it afterwards so it doesn't flake off. And it does take a while to dry though, however. I will say that it will take a while to dry. So, again, this is the Mod Podge glitter that I put on underneath it, and this has been covered with resin. This is a sign that I've made for somebody, a custom piece that I've done. But these are gem stickers that I have on top. And then another custom piece You know, these are wooden letters that I have glued down. And again, with a resin top. Anything that generally has a sticker or anything that an embellishment that I add on top, I generally add resin on top of it, even if it's just a little bit, just to make sure that it doesn't fall off. There's no risk damaging it. Okay, so that is a little bit about me, and or specifically what I use, the materials that I use to get the effects that I'm after. Not opposed to using art pens either, so I'll use anything from gel pens to Sharpies to, you know, those who grew up with me, they know that I went through a lot of Sharpies. In fact, I've got quite the collection of them between that and gel pens. So yeah, so that is sort of a rundown about different materials that I use, different the different styles that I'm into, both, you know, pours and resin and dot mandalas. So I'm not opposed to experimenting. I've got a long list of things that I'd like to try. So, all right, so I will do more in the next video. If you have any questions or comments about what I've said or would like to see anything in a demonstration that I have mentioned, feel free to make a comment about that below. If there's anything specific, please list it, because I went through a lot in this video. If you are a new subscriber, please feel free to hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you get an indication as to when my next video comes out. If you are a repeat viewer, thank you again so much for subscribing and supporting my channel, and I will see you all again soon.